We're starting in a completely desolate world, following a guy who is basically already at the end of his rope.
Yeah, it's a grim setup right from the very beginning.
Hmm.
We are introduced to our main character, Virgil.
Uh-huh.
He's heading toward a mysterious place called the Compound, mainly because he found a job pamphlet promising good work.
Right, and we really see the mechanics of that scarcity when he gets picked up by a guy named Keith.
Yeah, Keith is a piece of work.
He really is. Keith is a driver in this old, beat-up car, and his whole job seems to be transporting desperate people to this compound. But this is where the environment's brutality really hits you as a listener.
The extortion starts almost immediately.
Exactly. Keith starts demanding exorbitant amounts of money from Virgil for just the most basic human needs. We are talking about charging him a massive fee just to take a tiny sip of water.
Or even just to pull over for a bathroom break.
Right. It's extortion, pure and simple.
What's fascinating here is how it immediately establishes the rules of this universe, right down to the microeconomy inside that call.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because fiat currency, paper money, it means absolutely nothing. Waters are the true currency.
Water is life.
Exactly. The social contract that you and I rely on every day has completely broken down. It's replaced by this hyper-predatory dynamic where Keith leverages Virgil's basic biological needs for profit.
It's so dark. And Keith doesn't just extort him, he basically shatters Virgil's only hope.
Right, the pamphlet.
Yeah, he tells Virgil that the pamphlet he found is a complete lie. The compound isn't a place of opportunity at all. It's essentially a brutal slave camp where people are worked like animals and live in absolute terror.
It's the ultimate too good to be true scam.
Yeah. So Virgil is walking voluntarily into a literal nightmare, but he really has no other choice.
Until the car breaks down.
Right. They manage to fix it, but the next day Virgil insists on driving, and he clearly doesn't know what he's doing, so he overheats the engine, leaving them stranded all over again.
And Keith is furious. Naturally.
Completely furious. But during a tense bathroom break, the inciting incident happens. Virgil sees something shining in the dirt. He digs a little bit, and it is a massive, solid rock of pure gold.
Just an incomprehensible amount of wealth sitting right there.
Keith even tests it with fire to confirm it's real.
The irony of this moment is incredibly thick. Literally a minute ago, these two men were arguing over a broken engine on their way to a slave camp.
And now they're rich.
Oh, exactly. Now they're standing over a fortune that renders the compound and all of their previous problems completely irrelevant.
But there's a massive catch.
It's too heavy.
Way too heavy. We are talking 1,000 kilos. They try to dig it out with their tools. They even tie a strong rope to the car to try and drag it, but the car can't move it a single inch.
It's literally grounded. And because the gold is entirely unmovable by human hands or a standard car engine, they're forced to make a strategic decision.
They have to split up.
Which is where things really start to go wrong.
Yeah, so they agree that Keith will take the car and drive to a nearby town to get a heavy excavator, but the journey will take at least 5 days.
5 days in that heat is brutal.
It really is. So Keith leaves Virgil behind to guard the gold with some food, water, and an emergency phone. Now, I have to ask about this. Virgil actually insists on staying because he found the gold first and he doesn't trust Keith. But why would he put himself in that much danger?
It is the immediate birth of paranoia. And frankly, it's justified given the microeconomy Keith established earlier.
Because he charged him for water.
Exactly. Virgil knows Keith is predatory. If Keith leaves with the gold, Virgil has nothing. So Virgil buries the gold under the sand to hide it from anyone who might pass by.
To try to keep it a secret.
Right. But by doing that, he has now completely tethered himself to this single geographic coordinate in a totally lethal environment.
And the environment does not hold back at all. The sun is so brutal that Virgil quickly develops painful red blisters all over his face and body.
It's physical torture.
It is. So to survive the heat, he spots the wreckage of an old crashed airplane nearby. He drags the heavy metal parts back to the gold to build a makeshift secure tent.
Which takes a massive amount of energy.
Yeah, he is literally dragging airplane wreckage across a desert just to build a roof over a rock.
This is where we see his priorities perfectly visualized. He is using his precious calories and his hydration not to signal for help, but to build a fortress for his wealth.
That's a great point. He's protecting the rock, not himself.
Exactly. And the psychological pressure cooker gets turned up when Keith calls on the emergency phone.
Bad news, right?
Yeah, Keith says the car overheated again at a way station. He is severely delayed. So Virgil is now out there, blistering in the sun, with absolutely no timeline for rescue.
And nightfall brings a whole new terror. He is surrounded by the howling of wild dogs.
Which is terrifying when you're all alone.
Oh, completely. He actually has to fight off a vicious dog attack in the pitch black using a burning stick from his campfire. It is pure survival mode.
Just raw adrenaline.
Right, but the real turning point, the moment that seals his fate, is so much smaller than a dog attack. He runs out of food, and starving, he sees a venomous snake crawling on the ground and decides to try and catch it to eat it.
It is a desperate move born of starved delirium. I mean, hunting a venomous snake with your bare hands.
Yeah, it goes horribly wrong. He's weak, he fumbles the attack, and in the chaos of lunging for the snake, he knocks over his water bottle.
Oh no.
The cap pops off, and every single drop of his water spills out. It just absorbs instantly into the dry dirt.
That is devastating.
It's the worst case scenario. But this absolute isolation, this bubble he has created, is actually the most fragile part of his plan.
Because the desert isn't empty.
Exactly. Out of nowhere, a woman appears, just a wanderer walking through the desert.
The total wild card.
Yeah, she sees how terrible he looks and actually offers him a dried snake she has, just so he can eat.
And he refuses it.
He completely refuses. She is totally bewildered. She explicitly tells him that there is a water hole and supplies just 5 kilometers away.
5 kilometers.
Yeah, that is a walkable distance. Even in his diminished state, that would completely save his life. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly deeply disturbing. He says no.
He chooses the rock.
He refuses to leave his dirt patch. She notices things.
She notices the heavy airplane parts have been moved. She puts 2 and 2 together and deduces that he is hiding something incredibly valuable under that tent.
So she walks over.
Yeah, she ignores his warnings and marches straight toward his camp to investigate.
Yeah, Virgil is terrified. He tries to lie, telling her he's just waiting for a friend to take him to the compound, offering her the airplane shelter if she'll just go away.
But she doesn't buy it.
Not for a second. She tells him she knows he is hiding something big. And this is the moment the invisible chain tethering him to that rock turns a desperate normal guy into a murderer.
It's a huge escalation.
Terrified of losing his secret, Virgil grabs a heavy shovel, sneaks up behind her, and strikes her down. He hits her so hard that he kills her. And the aftermath of the murder is gruesome, and it really shows how far gone he is. He's panicking, so he buries her body in the sand.
But the desert doesn't let things stay buried.
No, it doesn't. Later, he sees the wild dogs have returned. They smelled the blood, dug up her grave, and are tearing at her body.
That is horrific.
He actually has to chase the dogs away, drag her corpse to a new spot, build a massive pyre out of scavenged wood, and burn her body to ashes just to hide the evidence of what he's done.
The physical calorie expenditure alone to build a pyre in his state is staggering.
Right. He has no food or water. And then Keith calls.
Yeah, when Keith finally calls the next morning to excitedly say he secured a bulldozer but will be even more delayed, Virgil just breaks down weeping on the phone. He is completely trapped.
And as if his internal world collapsing wasn't enough, the physical environment decides to mirror that chaos.
A storm.
Yeah, the desert weather suddenly shifts and a massive, violent sandstorm rolls in. The winds are so strong they could lift a person.
Which is terrifying when you're already weak.
Virgil barely makes it into his makeshift tent, but the storm is too powerful. It rips the heavy airplane parts away like they are nothing, destroying his shelter entirely and blowing away his remaining supplies.
Stripping away his last defenses.
And during the chaos, a large, jagged tree branch gets thrown by the wind and impales him right in the stomach.
Oh man, that is brutal. He is buried under the sand in a fallen tree. When he wakes up the next morning, the landscape is unrecognizable.
Everything shifted.
The storm wiped away all his landmarks. He actually has to frantically dig around in agony just to find his treasure again.
But he still has a piece of wood sticking out of his gut.
Unbelievable.
In an absolutely brutal display of survival, he pulls the branch out of his own stomach. And to stop himself from bleeding to death or getting a lethal infection, he heats up a piece of scrap iron in the fire and uses it to cauterize his own open wound.
Again, we see the biological will to live, but it is entirely hijacked by the proximity of the gold.
Right, he's not fixing himself to escape.
After he sears his flesh closed, a highly poisonous scorpion crawls right into the raw wound.
The combination of the venom, the severe infection, the extreme heat, and the dehydration, he begins hallucinating the woman he murdered, seeing her standing right in front of him.
His brain is completely failing at this point.
But then another woman actually does show up.
Wait, a real person?
Yes, it's not a hallucination. It is the dead woman's sister wandering the desert looking for her. Virgil realizes who she is immediately.
Oh, the guilt must be overwhelming.
And Keith calls on the emergency phone right at this moment, asking who the new arrival is. Keith coldly tells Virgil he has to get rid of this sister to protect their secret.
Of course he does.
So when the sister asks Virgil for food and water, he cruelly turns her away. He refuses to help her, even though she is looking for the family member. He literally burned to ashes.
He commits fully to the darkness. He has outsourced his morality entirely to the preservation of the wealth.
Yeah, he's lost his soul.
But his body is finally giving out. The scent of the blood from his cauterized, poisoned wound carries on the wind, and it attracts the pack of wild dogs again.
They surround him.
Virgil is terrified, weak, and defenseless. He gets on the phone and begs Keith for help,
And Keith tells him in a very calm voice that he is very close.
which leads to the big reveal.
Yes, this is the revelation that really changes the entire narrative structure of the story. Keith isn't driving a bulldozer on a highway miles away. Keith is sitting safely on a ridge on a nearby hill looking down at Virgil.
He was there the whole time.
He hasn't been delayed. He's been sitting there for a very, very long time, just watching.
It is a stunning sociopathic maneuver.
It's chilling.
We often think of betrayal as a sudden, violent act. But Keith operates more like an ambush predator, waiting for the venom and exhaustion to do the actual killing. Keith engineered this entire scenario.
Keith watches it happen, smiles, and finally drives his machine down to claim the treasure he waited so patiently for.
As Keith approaches the gold, the sister of the murdered woman, who is still in the area searching, sees him.
And she doesn't hesitate.
Not at all. She draws a bow and shoots Keith dead with an arrow. Both men die right next to the treasure.
Which means the gold remains entirely unclaimed. It is just buried in the dirt exactly as it was before they ever arrived.
What a pointless tragedy.
They went through absolute torture, compromised their souls, and died horribly for absolutely nothing. The gold claimed both of their lives. It makes you really stop and think about our own lives.
I mean,
Like, how often do we sacrifice our physical well-being, our mental health, or our moral compass for the promise of some future wealth? That quote-unquote gold payout that we might never actually live to enjoy.
it's a profound question. We tether ourselves to our own heavy boulders, convincing ourselves that the suffering, the stress, the isolation is just the mandatory cost of admission for future happiness.
But we lose ourselves in the process.
We do.
Yeah.
We ignore the fact that the pursuit itself is destroying the very person who was supposed to enjoy the reward.
Exactly. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over. Let's rewind to the very beginning of Virgil's journey.
Back to the walk.
Right. Remember where he was originally heading? The compound. A brutal, terrifying slave camp where people were worked like animals.
Yeah, his original destination.
If Virgil had never stopped to use the bathroom, if he had never brushed the dirt off that massive boulder of pure gold, he would have ended up in those horrific conditions.
But he likely would still be alive.
Exactly. Was the illusion of hope, the promise of unimaginable wealth provided by the gold, actually more dangerous and destructive than the grim, depressing reality he was originally destined for?
It's a dark thought.
It really is. What does it say about human nature that false hope can be more fatal than accepting a harsh truth? You are stranded in the wasteland. You trip over the gold. Do you stay or do you walk away? Something to think about.